I am talking to my buddy Jim McCann, who is a great mentor of mine, probably more of a mentor of mine than he even knows. And he's a Long Island guy talking to us now from Long Island. He is the founder of 1-800-Flowers. His book Stop and Sell the Roses is a bestseller, and for all of you entrepreneurs out there, the story of how he started is probably the story about how you could start your business as well. And so we're going to talk about a bunch of stuff, and you'll find something in here that will encourage you, that will elevate you, that will motivate you. And one of the things I want to talk about, because this is really, I mean, your son is now the CEO of 1-800-Flowers, but
I have a son that's in flowers, but the CEO is my youngest brother. I'm the oldest.
Your brother. That's right. That's
Chris,
right.
who's 10 years my junior, is now the CEO.
Right.
You're going to cause a trouble in the family now. That
I called you this last time.
My son is planning a coup or something. Who knew?
Oh my gosh, a coup. Yeah. So I think people would be interested, and I'm certainly interested in how did you with your business with so many employees, how did you handle the lockdowns?
Well, it was challenging, but you have to put it in context, John. It seems to me that the impact of COVID on businesses here in this country was binary. Either it was very bad, you were a gym or a restaurant, and you got crushed. Or you were an e-commerce business that's in the business of helping people express themselves and connect. And boy, that was more needed than ever when we went into lockdown with all the fears and uncertainty and the fears. Back at the beginning of this, John, you'll remember it wasn't that long ago, year and a half or so, our fears are very primal. Would we get sick? Would we have access to healthcare? Would they be able to help us? Would we get food? Remember, in the very beginning, it was crazy. So the impact on our business, net challenges in handling the business, keeping in supply, but the demand was overwhelming and continues very strong to this day, which says two things. We're fortunate that we had switched to an e-commerce model a long time ago. And the second thing is that we had products and gifts, our flower gifts, our food gifts, our personalized gifts, that people felt were a good way to express themselves and connect with the people they couldn't be with, they couldn't share their emotions in person with. So it caused our business to, from a demand side, to rocket. Of course, we had all the challenges of keeping our people healthy and learning to work remote, which is something we were semi-prepared for. But here we are today, hopefully with some vision to what the after effects of this will be. And
right.
Our business is more relevant than ever, and we've learned how to handle it, working remotely, keeping the supply chain, and demand is very, very strong.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I'm happy for you guys. By the way, I want to make sure I show people what I received yesterday in the mail from 1-800-Flowers. This is known as the Fields of Europe. How do you guys decide on what kind of arrangements you're going to do? Now, you must have a whole bunch of research on that.
We do, but primarily it's seasonal. So Fields of Europe will change throughout the year as the variety of flowers change. So it's colorful mix, it's long-lasting product, it's variety. So you got a variety of fragrances, and so those formulas, those mixes will be changing in some cases daily as supply changes. So you might have a beautiful batch of Sweet William that's available today and maybe for 2 or 3 more days, and then it's done. And then you move to peonies, which have a 3 or 4 or 5, 6 week window of availability. Then you switch on. So the good news is God provides us with a lot of different variety, and we get to bring that and change those mix recipes throughout the year.
We've had just recently, I feel like in the last year, well, because of COVID, but we've had so many pieces on the radio show, so much research that's come to us on what happens to your body when you just see colors like this, when you see, or when you have a plant on your desk. I mean, you see, I have one of your snake plants back there, where it's, it releases dopamine in your body and serotonin. With so many people working from home now, and people who don't have the view that I do out of my studio, which is sort of in the woods here, but we now know that there's data supporting the physical effects of even seeing flowers.
There is indeed, John. I know, here I am, 45 years a florist, and I still, when I bring home interesting product, interesting new plant varieties. Of course, the succulents have been so popular during this period. But yeah, our challenge has been finding enough plants.
Right.
We have our plant business at 1-800-Flowers. We have another brand called plants.com. My son, James, who you referenced earlier, he runs plants.com. And his business is whatever they can get, they're selling. So unfortunately, there's also been another challenge in that some of our domestic growers have found that there's another crop that's easier for them to grow and more lucrative. I bet you can figure out what that might be. So it's a challenge for us.
I'm sorry. Yeah. Oh, you mean marijuana? Yeah. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So cannabis has been an alternative for some of these plant growers to switch crops. So it's strained the supply of plants, but we're working with our growers around the country to get back in stock. But you're right.
I mean, who knew? You know, a kid from you and I, kids from the 1960s, that any of this stuff would even be legal at this point.
It is amazing,
wow,
isn't it?
Wow, and now it's affecting the flower business. So, you know, you started your business back in the 70s, and this is actually in the book, Stop and Sell the Roses. But one of the things I wanted to transition to is, and those of you who are watching on replay now, welcome to this broadcast. But I wanted to talk about entrepreneurship, because what's happened is, you know, our whole show, the Intelligence for Your Life show, is based on data and trends. And what we've seen just in the last 6 months is there's been an epidemic of people quitting their jobs. Many of them are working from home now. They figured out how to do that. They're selling on Amazon remotely. They're making big changes in their life. And what do you think is the reason for so many people going into retirement early, or just going for themselves?
John, what I think we see is at the beginning of the first year of the pandemic, it was devastating for a lot of small businesses. We lost more than 500,000 small businesses, according to the Department of Commerce, and that's very, very sad. That's people's lives, dreams crushed because of things way beyond their own control. The good news is some of the programs helped keep some businesses around that could survive and learn to adapt, and that's good. But I think that a phenomenon that you're talking about is a function of when people's lives are disrupted, and they work in a different way. It takes a little bit of adjusting to get used to it. And then I think people say, wait a minute, this working from home thing, what skills do I really have? Are they marketable? I like the idea of being able to have direct control of my life, because all of us felt a big lack of control. So I think that the sense of having a hand on your own till to pick your own path in life became much more attractive to people. And with the gifts that we have of this remote connectivity, of fast internet connections, of Zoom and Teams and all the other video technologies, the fact that we have these wonderful delivery services. So 5 years ago, if this would have happened, we weren't equipped to do it. The good news is, with all the new technology, we were equipped to adapt. And then you have marketplaces like Etsy and some of the other platforms that help makers sell their ware. I think all of a sudden people said, well, if I can do it for somebody else, maybe I could do it for myself too, and have a different balance in my life. I think the whole idea, and you and I have chatted about this over breakfast, I remember, the whole idea of work-life balance that I grew up with has been thrown out the window. I think more and more people are saying, look, I have a 7-day plan. And it's not I work Monday through Friday and I relax and recreate on Saturday and Sunday anymore. I have 7 days. So they're going to mix up their work and their business appointments and their community involvement over a course of 7 days. And if they can then be makers and apply their trade and their craft, whether they're a graphic designer or they have a Glowforge machine and they're making beautiful jewelry, I think people are prone to say, I'm going to look at life differently than my parents. I'm going to have a different set of glasses on, and I'm going to take control of my own destiny.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. You know, I was looking at, I do this a lot. I was looking at Amazon, the book sales, nonfiction. And I was, first of all, fiction, 9 out of the top 12 books are old Harry Potter books. Now that says to me that kids and even adults are just trying to enter a fantasy world and get the heck away from what's going on, you know, everywhere here in North America, around the world. But on the nonfiction side, it's Atomic Habits, Focus, Purpose, The 4 Agreements, Brene Brown's The Gift of Imperfection. A lot of people looking inside themselves. And then, excuse me, I started a Facebook group called Motivational Quotes and Videos, which quickly filled up with 30,000 people who are just sharing these prayers and motivational quotes and videos. But in order to get into this group, you have to answer membership questions. And the number one question is, what do you want from this group? And I would say 80%, Jim, of the people who enter this group, this motivational group, say purpose. And that's it. It's just purpose. And so I wanted to take you back to when you first decided that you needed more, if you did, that you needed more purpose in your life. When people see your biography or read Stop and Sell the Roses, they will see that at a certain point you decided that you were a successful businessman, but that you wanted to give back. And so not only are you involved with the New York Mets as one of the owners, and I'm sorry I have a Yankees hat on, which is not really, it's sort of giving back, right? Because you're giving people tickets. But you're involved with so many hospitals, and when did that, not only investing in them, helping them, donating, fundraisers, but also you're on the board of many of them. And when did you make that decision?
It was evolutionary, John. And what I find is, and what I would encourage people to think about is, it's the lines of everything are blurred. What I mean is, so we created a charity 6 years ago for personal reasons. The charity is called Smile Farms, as you know. And I'm the oldest of five. We already discussed that Chris, my youngest brother, is our CEO now. And my middle brother, Kevin, was born with developmental disabilities. And so he lives in a wonderful group home right near my home here. So he's very much a part of our family all the time. And we're blessed because there are so many people in their families with disabilities who don't have the good fortune we have. And Kevin's been thriving for 20 plus years in this group home. But the fellow who runs the program, it's called IGHL on Long Island here, wonderful guy, become a very close friend. His name is Walter Stockton, a saintly kind of guy who started this program 40 years ago. And now he takes care of more than 8,000 people a day with disabilities. But he called Chris and I, my brother Chris and I, and said, your brother Kevin should and could be working in the community. And so many of my other guys and gals here at IGHL should and could be, but I can't find them jobs. And Chris and I have been wondering, we love what some companies do. And I think companies don't get enough credit for what they do in terms of their charitable and community efforts, but mostly for their social engineering efforts. When big business or business of any kind gets involved and says, this is what we're going to do. And you see leaders like Bob Diamond and Jamie at JP Morgan, Jamie Diamond at JP Morgan, when they say, this is the diversity program we're going to have, it happens. And that impact on the community and on the causes that they embrace is enormous, and it is the single defining changing activity. So when I see companies like McDonald's and the wonderful work they do with Ronald McDonald Houses, Chris and I are saying we have these wonderful people who work here at Flowers, who are involved in charities of all kind, and we support them, but we didn't have one signature involvement where we could throw our all into it, our money, our energy, our talent, our time. And so when Walter called and said, we have to do something about this, we got the idea to buy a piece of property, build some greenhouses, create a not-for-profit, and have people like my brother Kevin, who now works there and has for 6 years, grow flowers and plants and food stuff that we resell, that creates money to keep the program going and sustaining and now growing. And but what I didn't anticipate was the positive impact it would have on the McCann family, because it's a glue. My sisters and brothers, my nieces and nephews, my kids, everybody's involved. We run fundraisers at dinners and golf events, and we had a trip last week to a ball game where we have several hundred people show up at a ball game. It's not so much a fundraiser as a friend raiser, but to see my niece in charge of that and to see my nephew taking charge of something else, we as a family have a reason to communicate, to stay connected, and to do things that are beneficial beyond ourselves. Well, it happens in the company too, John. At Flowers, when we say we need volunteers for an event, we're overwhelmed by 40 or 50 people sign up to take a day off on their own to come work at the event. And that has another flywheel benefit to us, because they then bring friends of theirs who are like them, who are caring and thoughtful and young. And they say, geez, I'd like to work at Flowers too, because I've gotten to know them by all our volunteer activities at Smile Farms. So yes, we benefit the individuals, and now with several hundred now who we provide jobs for in 10 different campuses. It benefits Flowers and the culture of our people and the wonderful young people. It helps us to attract and retain. And it's the glue in our family that keeps us, like my parents had us involved with my brother at a very young age, supporting him and other families with people with disabilities. So the benefits are overwhelming, and there isn't a line. It's not like, well, this is my work day and this is my volunteer time, and it's all entwined. And you know what? It's complementary, beneficial, and it creates that flywheel benefit.
You know, there's so much there. And by the way, folks, look up Smile Farms. The pictures on the website will just light you up. And you know, let's put a bow on this. You know, I started this off by saying people were coming into this group that I created, and I said, "Why do you want to be in this group?" And they said, "I want more purpose in my life." And so volunteering is a great purpose, but figuring out something that you're really interested in, and that's what you created, that you set that table for your family and for so many others. And you know, it's very, there's allegory here where, you know, I'm a churchgoer, right? But my pastor, Jack Hibbs, always says, you know, he's always kidding about the creasters that come to church, Christmas and Easter, right? When he talks about, you know, it's when if you want to have a spiritual life, if you want to have a connection to God, it needs to be all day and all night. And those can just be conversations, and you can be talking to God, you can be asking the Holy Spirit into your life, you can be praying, but it becomes just part of you, like you said about Smile Farms. And when that purpose, whatever it is something you think about all the time, but you don't just think, okay, every Thursday I've got to do this for a half an hour. That's really what God wants for us. And so I salute you. I think that's great that it's worked out that way.
I'm willing to bet, John, that Pastor Jack brings some of those same lessons every day to the community that is your church. Because when you say church, some people say, well, it's a building.
Yeah.
But I'm sure in your mind, it's a community.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there are lots of different programs where if you rub up against this community of people and you get drawn in to help deliver meals to those who can't get out, or you get involved in another community activity, it's a metaphor for a community of people with common interest. And by the way, if you get involved in those things, you don't have to ask what your purpose is.
Right. And there's all kinds of again, great data that shows what happens to your body when you volunteer. And for you singles out there, that's one of the key ways to meet somebody who's really cool is to find a place to volunteer in whatever you're.
Absolutely. You know, it's a very practical point you make, John. You gotta go play in traffic. A friend of mine always says, if you're in the activity, things will happen. Someone will ask you to do something. You might ask someone else to do something. Be the host.
Yeah.
Go grab 2 or 3 people and say, hey, they have a program here in our community or in our church in our community, and why don't we go do blank? And if you're the organizer, I always told the kids I worked with in the home for boys I ran, everybody's a little shy. And the best way to overcome your shyness is to make believe you're the host. So if you go to a cocktail party and you're a little uncomfortable because you don't know anybody, look for the person who's standing by themselves. They're hurting. They're having the same fear as you have. But if you go over and introduce yourself and make yourself the host, if you're the host, John, or your party, you're making sure everybody's involved in the conversation. I think it's the same rule, whether it's a cocktail party or it's a church function. Look for someone who might feel a little uncomfortable and make it your job to go make them feel comfortable. It's amazing how you'll forget about your own issues.
Yeah.
Being the host, great. Being the organizer, being the person who organizes the dinner, says, hey, let's get a group to go out for a burger after this activity. Be the host. Make it happen.
I think Tony Robbins just lost his gig. You're like this amazing life coach. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
It's the hard fought lessons I've learned and been fortunate enough. You and I have chatted in the past about we were both students of Zig Ziglar. But when you have people have a good message and you listen to it, you make it a part of your life. It's just fun to be able to pass on those lessons learned through the help of other people.
I have another tip that I'd like to bring up, and you can amplify, and that is the people on this Facebook page. They know that since 2015. I've been through 3 major cancer battles with the same cancer that kept returning, and I'm good now. But all of that suffering did a couple of things. One is it caused me to read Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning. He's a Holocaust survivor, a couple of times, just because I knew he had it worse than I did. The other thing is it created this amazing love affair between, even deeper, between my wife, Connie Selica, and I, who's this amazing advocate. But also tangentially, I realized who my real friends were. And this is, it's a little dark, but there are people that with cancer really scares people and they don't know what to do with it. And so I had some friends retreat, and then I had others who just figured it out, and would just find a way, And one of the pieces of advice we give on the radio show is don't, when it comes to grief, and I know that you guys have studied grief extensively, and you've done a great job providing means for people to deliver happiness to those who are going through grief. And also, on your website, there's plenty of information about how to do this. But one of the things that I learned that I didn't want done for me, I didn't want somebody to text me and say, let me know if I can do anything. That, to me, and that sentence showed up so many times in my text, and I'm sure it was well-meaning. But what it does is it gives you, who are on chemotherapy and throwing up in the bathroom, it gives you another job. You got to now tell them what to do. But then you have other people who are just like, they show up, right? They show up, and I've got 5 or 6 friends, and that's what they did. Out of about 50 or 60 that are around here that couldn't figure it out. God bless them. But they figured it out, and they just showed up. I mean, sometimes not to do another 1-800-Flowers commercial here, but we've talked about.
Don't hesitate.
We've talked about just finding something to do, and that's another thing that you do is you provide this opportunity where it's like, well, just if go ahead, I'm a guy, but go ahead, send me flowers, send me plants, or something like that. Don't ask me what I need.
So that's your advice. You're the person that people wanted to say something to, didn't know how. That's our great awkwardness. So what advice do you have? Someone hears that you are currently, let's go back a year where you were having health challenges. They hear about it. What advice would you have for them? Because they want to express themselves, they want to connect, they want you to know they're there, but they don't know how to. So sometimes they just ignore it. What advice would you give them? Because we all confront this every day, whether it's sympathy or health issues.
Yeah. I mean, it's don't be flat-footed. And you said it before. You got to go play in traffic. It's uncomfortable to show up with somebody. And listen, I have friends a college friend of mine, Steve Thomas, who's in Maine. He can't just show up. But during my whole journey, there wasn't a day or 2 days that went by when he said, how are you feeling right now? How's your leg? How's your, how's it going? Not can I do anything, but really genuinely wanted to know what was going on.
Be practical. Would he text you? Would he call you? Would he email you, or mix?
Everything. I mean, so he would say, hey, on Thursday, you got to join us for me and Mark, my friend Mark Templeton, who's in Florida. And we played ball together at NC State. And he said, I've set up a Zoom call. You better be there. It was like, now I've got something I can look forward to. And it's you don't have to be that creative, but it really is just be careful not to be flat-footed is what I would say.
Doing nothing is the worst thing.
Yeah, you're going to feel terrible about it. And it's, you just don't, it's just, unfortunately, not everybody has the data on what people want to hear, right? I mean, that's why you studied grief at Flowers, but it's, I can just say, it's just, you're looking for a connection, and you're not looking for, it's God has a plan, right? You're not looking for that, because God's plan is that God wants you well. I mean, that's why Christ went to the cross, took our sicknesses and our, and our sins. So I get that, I understand that, but my dad had the same cancer and he died. I don't need those stories, please. It's just find a way to connect and ask me how I am, and then I mean,
or just say that they're thinking about you.
Everybody on Facebook is not going to ask me how I'm doing, but it's just think about it and find a weapon of your choice to make a difference.
Yeah, I think the biggest mistake we make is, they wouldn't want to hear from me. When you were talking about sympathy, and you and I have talked about this before.
Oh man, you just nailed it, Jim. You just nailed it. Don't make assumptions. Go ahead.
Yeah, people say, should I go to that service? Well, did I know them well enough? And the answer is, yeah, if you knew them well enough, because it's not about did you know them well enough. It's about expressing yourself and in some way demonstratively showing that you care for the family, for the community they're a part of. There was just a tragedy here in our community. 3 young people were killed in an automobile accident from the same community. And what was wonderful was there was a church service, and the church in Manhasset on Long Island, and the place filled up, overwhelming outside. There were probably 1,000 people outside the church, in addition to the church itself being packed. Now, for those families, nothing could console them. One family lost two sons, 2 brothers. And there was another young lady still hospitalized from it. But the family got the support, and the community got the benefit of knowing they genuinely were a community. And what can you do? Well, what you can do is show up and express yourself and send a note, send a condolence, send a gift, send a card, because at that point, the families are so overwhelmed that your little gesture could help lighten the burden of the experience they're going through. So whenever you have a doubt, act in the affirmative, do something, as you say, don't be flat-footed.
Yeah, that's such
and
great
it's tough
advice.
for a lot of people, families in particular, during this whole COVID experience, because the rites and rituals around death and dying have changed, and they're not going to go back exactly the way they were. They never will. It seems to me like when there's a memorial service, an aspect of it will be this virtual kind of participation, for people who are out of town or unable to get out for some reason or another. All of these rites and rituals have changed. So yes, at Flowers, we've been looking at that quite a lot just to see what the data tells us, and speaking with smart people around the industry to say, how will this change and how could we offer your knowledge to our community? But people looking at, geez, how do I express myself? So it's accelerated lots of things. It's accelerated the change in retail. I don't think I want to be a commercial office real estate owner for a while, because everybody I talk to, like you, John, some of our workforce, all of our workforce is remote now, and we don't need all the space that we used to have, and that's going to take a while to shake out through this system. So every big event, every forcing function like we just went through or going through has consequences, and it's a good exercise, I think, as business people, as community members, as family members, to sit down with our grown kids and our grandkids, in my case, and talk about, well, if this happened, what's likely to happen when school starts?
Right.
And if your kids get involved in that exercise and you teach them that there is a way to think progressively and linearly about what an event happens, it's going to have ramifications. And if you think about them and anticipate them, you're better able to respond and make them to your advantage.
That's awesome. That's wise advice. Always from you, Jim. Wise advice. Jim McCann. And before I go, let me thank you for the flowers that I'm sure you sent them personally.
I made them myself. Yeah.
In the interest of personal disclosure, full disclosure, I didn't tell my wife where these came from. I put them in the car and I drove around the block. And then I came home and said, "Here, honey, thank you for everything you've done for me." So
we so applaud deceit.
I hope the secret's safe with you. Jim McCann, tell me.
Hardly anybody listens to your program.
Right? So tell people how they can reach you, how they can get involved with Smile Farms.
Well, if you just come to the 1-800-Flowers website, or just go to smilefarms.org, you'll see what we're doing. And if you have some ideas on how we can do it better, one of the things we're doing, we found out we're growing peppers. And you know the climate here on Long Island, we can grow a lot of peppers. We grow them in New York City, we grow them in Brooklyn, Long Island, Staten Island, and other campuses as we develop now. So all of our campuses grow different things, but the one thing we all grow is peppers, because we're making this amazing hot sauce out of them. And
you mean on Smile Farms, you mean?
At Smile Farms, yep.
Oh, that's great.
And so that's our new item now. We smell our burnability hot sauce. And it seems to me about 20% of the people I come in contact with like hot sauce, but when they like hot sauce, they really like hot sauce.
That's me. That's Gib too. We both do. And so is the hot sauce available online right now?
It is. So if you see, go to the smilefarms.org site, you'll see our hot sauce, and we have a huge crop coming in right now of peppers, and they're easy to handle. They're easy for our farmers to negotiate. I just went to a campus last week out in Staten Island, and they have 2 greenhouses filled with all different kinds of peppers. And to see these young people who 6 months ago didn't have a job, now beaming with smiles about, we have the jalapenos in here, and now they know the name of 15 different varieties of peppers, and look how they're growing. These will come in later than those. These will be our first we harvest. It really does get your juices going to see people get really excited about growing stuff.
And this, I'm assuming that all of this money goes to help these developmentally challenged people.
It gives us a chance to create that flywheel. The more we make, the more people we can employ, the more families we impact, because it's not just about the individual, and it's certainly not just about a paycheck. It's social. It's a reason to get up in the morning. And there isn't a week that goes by, John, that I don't meet a family younger than me who say, what do I do with my 23-year-old son who's on the spectrum? There's no more school programs. There's nothing for him to do. He's withdrawing. He's deteriorating socially. And when we can get them qualified and they're into a jobs program, and you see the parents 4 months later and they have a smile on their face, because now it's not just the individual, it's a whole family, it's a whole community that they impact. And when we can impact one, we impact many.
And let me do what I do for a living, and just say that when you eat hot sauce, the hotter that is, there's capsaicin in most of those peppers, and what that capsaicin does is it releases an amazing amount of dopamine in your body, and so it'll put you instantly in a good mood, and that good mood will last, as researchers say, will last for at least 2 hours after every dose of hot sauce. And what it does is it raises the temperature in your body, which can also fight infections and the infestation of germs, which we're all scared about.
So while I'm writhing in pain on the floor, I have the consolation that my body's producing more good stuff.
Yeah, hopefully they're not ghost peppers, which is really, really beyond. Jim McCann, thanks so much for being my friend. Thanks so much for telling us all about your life, which has definitely helped shape mine as a mentor. I appreciate it.
John, friendship is all about that mutual benefit, that mutual connectivity.